Hey, I'm Rob from JestaThaRogue.com and I'm going to show you how to play Terracotta Army. This is a game for 2 to 4 players with official solo rules available online, plays in about 120 minutes and is published by Board and Dice. The Emperor has passed away. To protect him in the afterlife, you need to gather clay and coins to build a great army of statues to stand guard in the Emperor's tomb. And the player that does this best is the winner. So why not join this YouTube channel's army by hitting subscribe and protect it from the YouTube algorithm by clicking like and leaving a comment. On to setup. Put the board on the table and add the double-sided clay tokens and coins next to the board. Put one dry clay, the cracked side, in each of the 4 warehouses around the wheel. Randomly align the 3 action rings so all the symbols are in a row. Randomly draw 5 of the 12 green scoring tiles face up and place them on the round track. Return the rest to the box. As these need to be orientated in the correct way, make sure they show the little triangle on the bottom left of the tile. Put the half moon round token on round 1 of the round track. Put the inspector pawn on the 2 starting spaces at the bottom left of the mausoleum. Put the 16 specialist minis on their matching shape spaces on the bottom right of the board. Put the warrior minis upside down inside the warrior organizer and place it next to the game board. Get the priority tokens, 1 fewer than the number of players, so 2 in a 3-player game. Put them in order in their space above the turn order track with 1 on top. Give each player 3 coins and 1 of each of the 4 weapon tokens that start on the crossed out inactive side. Players get the pieces of their colour and use 5, 4 or 3 of each meeple for 2, 3 or 4 players. Place the artisans, the larger meeples, in the supply next to the board. Put the scoring marker on 0 points. Choose a random start player. Put their token on top of the turn order track and place the other player's tokens in clockwise turn order below. The start player will not start with any resources. The second player in turn order gets 1 wet clay, third gets 2 wet clay and a coin, and fourth 3 wet clay and 2 coins. That's setup complete, and a game is played over 5 rounds, each of 3 phases: action, scoring and cleanup. In the action phase, the player may rotate the wheel, then must place a worker, then may take the actions. At the start of their turn, a player may pay 2 coins to rotate 1 wheel 1 step in the direction shown on the arrow on the wheel. A reminder of this is shown in the middle of the wheel. When you rotate the outer wheel, it may also move the inner wheel, so make sure to hold the inner wheel so you're not moving both. And after moving or not moving a wheel, the active player must then place a worker on a segment on the wheel. If placing a craftsman, the small meeples, you can only place in a completely empty segment. Players may eventually gain their artisans from the supply that can be placed into an empty segment or a segment with a craftsman, even your own craftsman. Basically, the big meeples block a space off if there's one in there, and little meeples can only go into empty spaces. Then the player may perform actions on the segment where the worker was placed, in order from inside to out. If you don't take the action on the inner or middle wheel, you can take a wet clay or coin instead. This is shown as a reminder near the wheel. And let's look at the actions. For the coins and wet clay, gain that many coins or gain that much wet clay from the supply. Wet clay is orange side up. Soak the clay. This jug of water lets you flip all of your dry clay to wet clay. Upgrade Assistant allows you to do just that. Remove the craftsman used for this action from the game and replace it with an artisan from the supply. Priority token. Take the top one from the stack. Take the number of wet clay shown on it. For example, taking the 3 token gives you 2 wet clay. Players can only ever have 1 priority token at a time. The weapon allows you to ready a weapon. To ready a weapon, simply flip the token over to its active side. Clay and warrior. Spend the amount of clay shown to place a warrior in the mausoleum. For example, this action lets you place a warrior for 2 clay. When paying the cost, return the wet clay to the supply, but add 1 of them as dry clay to the warehouse closest to the meeple you placed. Pick any warrior from the box, put a base on it and put it in any space in the mausoleum. Then score the points shown on the organizer. For example, the first one of each type will be worth 8 points. And bases are unlimited, so if you run out, use something else to remind you that that warrior belongs to you. You may then flip an active weapon of that warrior to activate the ability if you have the relevant weapon ready. First, let's look at the officer. When placing an officer, you can flip the sword to gain 1 point. You may then move either inspector forward or backwards 1 space. Next is the guard. When placed, flip an active halberd to gain 3 points. Then you move 1 warrior through any number of empty spaces in a straight line. When placing a crossbowman, flip the crossbow to gain 1 victory point for each empty space from this to any other statue in the same row or column. For example, there are 4 spaces between the crossbowman and this statue, so the player will score 4 points. When placing a soldier, flip the spear to gain 1 victory point and 2 coins. There's a reminder of all these actions on the side of the warrior box. Back to the actions, and the statues on the outer ring are to place a specialist. You need to spend coins equal to the number showing in the column and have the relevant weapon for the specialist you want to build ready. For example, to build the first horse you will need 1 coin and the sword ready, which will then flip over to its inactive side. The next player will need 2 coins and the sword ready. Then you place a specialist anywhere in the mausoleum. You do not need to put a base on a specialist. Horse. placed with an empty space under one of your warriors. Your warrior will stay on the space they were on. Now it's very important to remember that this whole thing still only counts as one warrior, but it now takes up 3 different spaces. This is important for scoring. Also, if this warrior on a horse is moved, the whole thing moves together and stays in the same orientation. And the next 3 specialists are all used for scoring, so I'll explain them more when I talk about the end of the round and the end of the game. Footmen can be placed anywhere, but the points around them show their scoring will affect the 8 adjacent spaces. Kneeling archers count as a warrior of the type they are kneeling towards, so their orientation matters when placing them. Keep in mind that a kneeling warrior only counts as a warrior of that type for end game group scoring only. I'll explain more when we get to the end game scoring. Musicians can be played anywhere, but the plus sign on the base shows their scoring will affect warriors in their row and column. The final action is to gain a master. The 6 master actions are all found on the middle ring. If you do not have a master token in the relevant area of the board, pay the cost to place one. You have 6 master tokens costing 1 to 6 coins. Pay for any of them and place it on the relevant master space. You can only assign 1 token to each master. And if you just placed a token or you already had one there for the master that you activated, you then take that master's action. The master builder is shown with a statue. Pay coins equal to the round number to place a warrior in the mausoleum. You must choose a warrior of the type there is the most of in the box. You choose if there is a tie. Now you still add one of your bases to them, but you don't get any victory points and you don't activate a weapon to use their ability when placing a warrior this way. The master administrator is shown with rings. Simply perform the inner ring action of the ring you activated this turn once again. The master inspector is shown with the inspector. Move 1 inspector forward 1 or 2 spaces. For the master claymaker, simply gain 3 wet clay. For the master supervisor, gain all of the dry clay from any 2 of the 4 warehouses on the board. Finally, the master blacksmith allows you to ready all of your weapons. Each master awards a bonus in the cleanup phase, which I'll go through when we talk about that step. And once the player has taken all the actions that they want to, the next player will take their turn. Once all workers have been placed, the round ends. At the end of each round, you score inspectors, musicians, and the current round scoring tile. For inspectors, first score the left inspector for warriors in that row, then the bottom inspector for warriors in that column. For the inspectors and quite a few other ways of scoring in this game, you will score for dominance, which is having the most, and presence, which is having something. For inspectors, the player with the most warriors in that row gains dominance and scores 7 points. Any other player with at least 1 warrior in that row gains presence and scores 3 points. Kneeling archers break ties. They don't have to be in the row, just pointing at a warrior that is. For example, these 2 players both have 2 warriors, but the purple player has a kneeling archer, so will win the tie and score 7 points. The yellow player has presence and will score 3 points. And with any ties in these scoring steps, if no one dominates, no one gets points for dominance, just award points for presence. After scoring the inspector, move it forward 1 space. For musicians, each player scores 1 point for each of their warriors in the same row and column as a musician. If you happen to have the same warrior in multiple rows and or columns for different musicians, they will score multiple times. There is a reminder for all the specialist scoring under each specialist on the board. For the round scoring tiles, score the one for the current round. First, the scoring tokens with the lines. These score for dominance and presence in the lighter colour lines, either the row or column in the mausoleum in the same way you scored the inspectors. Also, the squares score for dominance and presence for warriors in the matching dark square section in that part of the mausoleum. And this is why it is important to have these scoring tiles orientated properly during setup with the triangle in the bottom left. For the warriors, these score for dominance and presence for warriors of that type anywhere in the mausoleum. And just as a reminder, the kneeling archers at this point are still only used for breaking ties. They do not count as a warrior of the type they are kneeling towards. For the coins and clay scoring, simply score dominance and presence for the most coins or clay in the same way. Both wet and dry clay count. Dominance and presence scores for round scoring tiles are shown on the board for that round and score progressively higher each round. After scoring comes the cleanup phase. Players with a priority token take that space in turn order and return priority markers to the stack. Players that did not take a priority token go below those players, keeping their current turn order. Players then flip all their wet clay to the dry side. Players with a token on the Master Claymaker, Master Supervisor and Master Blacksmith, those on the right of the Master area, can protect 1 piece of clay from going dry per token placed. There is a reminder next to those masters. Players receive 1 coin for each Master Builder, Master Administrator and Master Inspector they have, those on the left side of the Master area. Again, there is a reminder of this next to that Master. At the end of rounds 1 to 4, there is a little bit of admin to do. Players take their workers back from the wheel, then rotate the inner ring once, then the middle ring once, then advance the round marker and start a new round. At the end of round 5, players perform endgame scoring. Score footmen. They score 8 points for dominance and 2 points for presence for the 8 spaces surrounding them. Next, score kneeling archers. They award 2 points to the player that controls the warrior they are facing. Next, you score groups of warriors. Remove anything that is not part of a group of 2 or more of the same type of warrior. It doesn't matter who owns them. This is where kneeling archers become a warrior of the type they are facing. They extend this group, so look for them connecting groups of the same warrior together. Players will score each group of statues. They score the number of statues in that group times by the number of players that have statues in that group. For example, this group has 1 from the purple player, 2 from the yellow player, and 2 from the green player. That's 5 warriors times 3 players, so purple, yellow and green score 15 points. Then for each of these groups you award 5 points for dominance and 2 points for presence. So in this case, yellow scores 5 points as the kneeling archer breaks the tie with green, who scores 2 points, as does purple for presence. Finally, players score 1 point per 2 coins and clay they have. For example, these 3 coins, 1 wet clay and 2 dry clay, are worth 3 points. And the player with the most points is the winner, with ties broken by current turn order, and that's how you play Terracotta Army. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when a new video goes live. You can follow me on Insta, Twitch and YouTube at JestaThaRogue, and find the blog at JestaThaRogue.com. I've been Rob, aka JestaThaRogue. I'll see you soon.